Today's episode is sponsored by Midwest Fire. For more than 20 years, Midwest Fire has been manufacturing high-quality tankers, tanker pumpers, and fire rescue vehicles in the United States and Canada. Keeping firefighters safe while enhancing their capabilities is what they do best. To learn more, go to MidwestFire.com.
This is Ryan Pennington from Jump Seat Radio, and you are listening to Dr. Richard Gasaway on SA Matters Radio. The SA Matters mission is simple. They want to help us see the bad things coming in time to avoid bad outcomes.
Hello, and welcome to episode 55 of the Situational Awareness Matters radio show. I'm your host, Rich Gasaway. The purpose of this show is to improve situational awareness and decision-making for individuals and teams who work in high-risk, high-consequence environments. The SA Matters mission is simple, to help you see the bad things coming in time to avoid bad outcomes. I'm coming to you today from Greenfield, Indiana, where I'm in town delivering a week-long Company Officer Development Institute program and a situational awareness program for firefighters in the greater Indianapolis region. The Company Officer Development Institute program is designed to help company officers be successful at leading in the firehouse. It's 5 days of no PowerPoint, no BS, no baloney, no theory, just solid best practices to help company officers deal with their challenges in the firehouse. In today's episode, I interview Cypress Creek Fire Lieutenant Jason.corthell, who led a crew of 3 firefighters up an exterior stairwell on a fast-moving apartment building fire. The fire was inside the apartment on the 3rd floor and in the attic. The stairs, constructed of steel and concrete, were not involved in the fire. The nozzleman was on the 3rd floor landing of the stairwell, preparing to attack the fire. Lieutenant Corthell and a fellow firefighter were on the 2nd floor landing, advancing the hose line up the stairs to the nozzleman. Suddenly, without warning or provocation, the stairwell collapsed, trapping the 2 firefighters who were on the 2nd floor landing. The firefighter was on the 3rd floor landing, rode the debris down onto the 2nd floor landing, and was uninjured. Lieutenant Corthell's radio was dislodged in the collapse, and he was not able to call a mayday. The C-Sector commanding officer noticed the collapse and called the mayday and deployed resources to successfully rescue the trapped firefighters. Listen to Jason as he describes what was going through his mind when he was trapped and couldn't move, and how he felt a sense of calm and came to peace with himself that he was going to die, and how he prayed to God that he take him quickly. Let's join our interview with Cypress Creek Lieutenant Jason.corthell.
The day was March 27th. It was approximately 5:50 in the evening. We were just getting done with our 12-hour shift. We usually start at 6 in the morning and go until 6 p.m. And there's, anywhere from 12 plus on duty a day on the day crew for this department.
Jason, how many of those are full-time career, and how many are part-time that are working shifts?
We're actually a combination department. We have no full-time firefighters. It's staffed by volunteers at night and on the weekends mainly, and then during the day it's mainly off-duty career firefighters that are working their side job.
Okay, so everybody on duty there is working for Cypress Creek part-time, and they're career firefighters somewhere else.
Correct, and the majority of the career firefighters in this department are Houston firefighters.
Okay, all right, so go ahead and continue on.
So, it was about 10 minutes before we got off shift, and we had a pretty slow day. Did our normal station duties, cleaned the station, wiped down the trucks, went to work out, just a run-of-the-mill day. I had plans to meet up with some guys that I was on duty with to go play basketball right around 6:30, 7 o'clock that night. And we were actually discussing it when the tones dropped to assist a neighboring department with a apartment fire. So we loaded up on the truck, and probably 75% of the time when you're dispatched to a mutual aid fire, you tend to get either stuck in staging or turned around completely and disregarded.
Mm-hmm.
Well, we turned the corner and I saw the smokestack from the front right seat. I was riding lieutenant that day, and so I knew we had one. So I let the guys in the back know that we had a working fire, and switched over to our neighboring department's radio, and we started heading that way.
Which department? Which department was having the fire?
Cypher.
Okay. All right. Go ahead.
And so we pulled up. We pulled up on scene. We were probably fourth or fifth apparatus on scene, and as we were walking up, they were already dropping the second alarm. We have automatic aid, so we were on the first. We're on the first alarm, and then they were dropping the second as we were walking up. As we were walking up, I started asking for our assignment and where command wanted us, and he was overloaded with radio traffic at that point and didn't respond right away. And so we waited in staging for a little bit, and eventually one of the other guys on my crew, who's also a captain with the city of Houston, said that he knew command because he worked with him in the city. So we all walked over there, and he kind of knocked on the window of the command vehicle and said, hey, we're engine 24 and we're here to do work. Just tell us where to go. And at that time, we got assigned to the Charlie side of the structure, the rear of the structure, and our assignment was to meet up with engine 6 and help with fire attack in the third floor / attic, and make headway. At the time when we arrived and we started walking up to the building, I could see smoke coming out of the ridgeway, and I knew it had gotten up in the attic, but it didn't look like anything too substantial that we couldn't handle with the crews that were on scene already.
Jason, describe this building.
It was a 3-story apartment complex, and it was kind of interesting how it was built because the main body of the complex, the center of the complex or building, was 3 stories. And then on the exterior of the building, the main building, they had a 2-story apartment. So there was basically 2 different levels of roofs. So there was a 2-story part, and then in the middle there was a 3-story part, and then on the other side there was a 2-story part. So it just kind of built up in the middle a little bit and had a 3rd story. It wasn't, any substantially different than any other apartment, down here as far as size or anything like that. It was about the normal size of an apartment building, and pretty much normal layout. The roof structures were interesting just because, you had a 2-story roof butted right up against a 3rd-story roof. So basically, if I got on top of the 2nd-story roof, I could look at the 3rd-story siding. And that's actually what we were planning on doing, was getting up on the 2nd-story roof, cutting a hole in the side of the building, because it would have given us access to the attic in the 3rd floor, and we would have been able to hit it from the what would be my right side on the rear of the building. And we already had crews working, I guess on the left side, if you're facing the Charlie side of the building. So we were basically going to pinch it off in the middle. So we got our assignment, and
What's your crew size?
Right now my crew size is 3. My driver stayed with the truck.
Okay.
Just usually on mutual aid calls, he'll stay with the truck and help out where he needs to.
Okay.
And then it was 3, and then we had, interestingly enough, my best friend, the one that I, basically grew up in the fire service with and had planned to play basketball with, showed up, and he was riding district chief on the volunteer side for Cy Creek. And he showed up, and he had his gear on and everything, and he walked up to me, He said, "Hey," he said, "Command didn't have an assignment for me right away, so I'm just going to go with your crew." And I said, "All right, let's go." And so then my crew size was up to 4 now. And our assignment was to stretch an apartment lay, a 3-inch line from the first arriving pumper, and then take the 1 3/4 off of that. And like I said, go up and meet engine 6 on the rear of the building, the Charlie side. And so my buddy, the district chief, his name is Gil Sanchez. He pulled the cross lay that they didn't have a pre-connected apartment lay, so he pulled the cross lay, and then the driver from engine 6 from Cypher grabbed the 3-inch supply line off the truck and started taking it to the rear. So we got to the back. Like I said, our original plan was to ladder the 2nd-story roof and make access to the 3rd-story attic by way of cutting a hole in the middle of the building in the siding. That way to basically shoot a stream through there. Mm-hmm. So I sent one of my guys and a Cypher guy that wasn't doing anything at the time to go get a ladder and meet me back on the Charlie side. While I was doing that, my other crew member, the captain that works for the city of Houston, and my buddy Gil, the district chief, they both grabbed the line and started working their way up the stairs. So I was down on the ground still kind of monitoring my 2 guys that were on the stairwell, and also waiting my crew member to come back with the Cypher member with the ladder. So as soon as I saw Brian come around the corner, he's the one that grabbed the ladder. I knew he had the ladder, and we also had a district chief behind us that was assigned to Charlie sector. He was the Charlie sector chief. So I looked up at Gil, and Gil was on the 2nd-story landing, and as I looked at him, he kind of motioned for me to come up to help him, pull some hose. And so I walked up the stairs, and I started pulling hose, for our nozzleman. And our nozzleman started making his way up to the 3rd floor. And that's really the last I saw of him. I got up to the 2nd-story landing, and me and Gil were facing each other at the time. And Gil had just told me, he's like, I'm about to go up to the 3rd floor to help Captain Polite with fire attack. And I said, that's fine. I said, I'm going to stay down here, and I'll just keep feeding you hose. Well, no sooner than I said that, it was kind of eerie. We just looked at each other for apparent no reason. And I felt something hit me in the shoulder, just barely nick me. And it felt like it was, a piece of sheetrock or piece of wood or something that I could withstand. And then I looked at Gil, and I saw something hit him hard enough to almost throw him into me. And it kind of knocked the front shield of his helmet down and knocked him forward. As he was kind of stumbling forward into me, my initial reaction was to kind of grab him, and I would think at that point what I would want to do is just go back down the stairs with him, because we were only 1 flight up. And before I could do that, we had the steel and concrete exterior stairwell of the apartment come down on top of both of us. And at first I just kind of moved and kind of went with the motion, and I thought maybe I can dodge it, or maybe I can still stand up and withstand the punishment that's going on. I'm a big guy. I'm 6'4". I'm 250 pounds. So I can hold my own when it comes to kind of being a brute or pushing stuff around. And Gil's also a really big guy too. So for us two to experience this, it was something definitely new and something that we never thought we'd get caught in. So before you knew it, everything was on top of us. I had I remember 3 limbs being pinned down, and my radio got ripped out, and all I had was my left arm to move, and everything else was pinned underneath the stairs and the landing and whatnot, whatever came down on top of us. And Gil ended up being maybe 2 feet in front of me, and he basically got squashed like a pancake. His head was in between his knees, and the top of his air bottle and the back of his helmet were holding up the landing that came down. So I don't know how much one of those weighs, but it's a big concrete slab held in by angle iron, and that came down. And so basically, he was holding up the entire collapse, and I didn't hear anything from him for about 15 seconds. I would estimate, in that time, things go fast and things go slower than what you think. But for me, it was probably about 15 seconds. I didn't hear anything from him. And at that point, I thought I had just lost my friend. I thought I had just witnessed his death for the most part. And he didn't say anything. And I didn't really say anything either. I kind of laid there. I don't know if I was kind of in a form of shock or what the deal was. And then I heard Gil start screaming that his legs were on fire. And when the collapse happened, we still had, active fire everywhere. And I'm not sure if he got embers underneath his legs or fire underneath his legs, but his legs were burning underneath him. And like I said, I had my left arm it wasn't pinned. So the least I could do is at least take my left arm and start sweeping underneath his legs. So while I'm sweeping underneath his legs, I thought at least he knows that I'm there with him and he's not alone. I don't know how much good I'm doing. And then I heard him get on his radio and start trying to call out a mayday. And that's when it kind of really sank in and got real to me that we might not be making it out of this thing, And he got on the radio, tried to call his mayday. He got trumped by the sector chief by his mayday. I remember hearing we've had a full structure collapse, and I remember hearing all the resources that he kept calling out. All the tools needed, the crews that are needed. He said, everyone come to the back. We've had a collapse. We need this tool, this tool, this tool. I can't remember all the tools he named. But then it really sank in that we were stuck pretty bad. Like I said, being a bigger guy, your first reaction is just to kind of push up off of everything and just kind of push everything off of you and wiggle your way out. And I've never had that feeling where I've been pinned down to the ground. Probably since I was little, my dad, would pin me to the ground and tickle me or wrestle me or something like that. I mean, that's really what I liken it to, is you just really have a sense of helplessness and you can't do anything and you're just at the mercy of some inanimate object. And when that sank in, that was the hardest part for me was, this is how everything's going to end, and
I would think initially you were struggling pretty hard, but at some point did you just realize you weren't going to beat this and you just needed to lay there?
Yeah, I mean, exactly. And I literally said a prayer, and I know Gil was saying it's all in God's hands now, and
he said that out loud?
Oh yeah, multiple times. And I was praying mainly for just, I said, God, make it quick, multiple times. And
what do you mean by that?
What's that?
What do you mean by that?
I just didn't want to suffer if there was going to be more collapse, because I didn't know what was on top of me. I just knew it was really heavy and I couldn't move it. So I didn't know if it was a staircase and that's it, or I didn't know if it was a staircase and then everything else came down on top of us, like the whole building. I didn't know. I just knew it was something that was really heavy. And so I started thinking worst case, especially when I heard the mayday go out and heard all the resources that were being called for. I just thought the worst, and I thought I was going to die. I mean, it definitely crossed my mind. And seeing Gil, take on that landing the way he did, and knowing that he was dead, or knowing that he almost died as well. I mean, that to me was pretty much the end of it for both of us. and that's just how I felt at the time. But I mean, you hit the nail on the head. You kind of struggle at first, and you're scared, and you're pissed off, and you have all kinds of emotions. And then for me, I just kind of came with it, and I was like, I had just clicked in on air right before this happened, so I knew I had a good air supply. So I just thought, okay, I need to start conserving air because there were still fire conditions. It was still really smoky. It was still really, there was still some heat, coming off of things. I mean, my gear was burned, and there was still, some bad stuff going on around us. And like I said, all I could do at that time was take my left arm, my free appendage, and start sweeping underneath Gil's leg to try and get some of the embers off from underneath his leg while he's screaming.
Let me ask you a question. In a number of interviews that I've done, the folks that are in the bad spot that you're in, many of them have said to me that in the moment of the spot that they're in, that somehow they felt a sense of calm, almost coming to the realization that this is how it's going to end for me, and their anxiety just kind of waned away, and they just felt like there was a peace in their mind that this was going to be the end for them. Did anything like that happen for you?
Yes, most definitely. I mean, I think when I started praying, it wasn't a frantic thing in my head. It wasn't a frantic thing. I wasn't like, screaming, please God, make it quick or anything like that. I was 100% ready to go, and I thought this is how everything's going to end. I didn't know what else was going to collapse. I didn't know how bad the collapse was or anything, and I had to come to peace with it. In my mind, I started getting really calm, and it felt like it was chaos, and then it got really quiet, and it was like, everyone kind of, it felt like everyone just kind of said, oh my God, did that just really happen? Like that's just how the aura felt around me. And yeah, I was ready to go. I was calm. I was calm about it. You panic, and then you realize that you're not gonna beat it. It's however much steel and concrete on top of you.
Yeah.
And so then you get calm.
Did you think about your family at all?
Yeah. I thought about my family, thought about, everybody, thought about my friends, my department. I thought about everybody. And to be honest with you, that the first thing and the prominent thing that really got me was my friend's family, because I've known him since early 2005. And I mean, I was basically there when him and his wife went to the hospital to have their first kid, and they have 3 now. I've been to family Christmases with them. I'm real close with him and his family. And it's just crazy to me how on that day he just showed up randomly to the scene and said, Jay, I'm on your crew with you, let's go. And earlier in that day, we reached out to each other, and we were going to play basketball together. And we haven't played basketball together in probably over a year. And it was just, and then even more strange, earlier that day, my ex-wife found an old picture of me and him together on her phone, and she sent me a picture of him and I together.
That day.
That exact day. And I didn't prompt it. It was just, she said, hey, I found a picture of you and Gil, back in 2005, at a wedding or something. And she sent it to me, and I have it on my phone. And it says received March 27th on my phone.
Wow.
And
okay, so you're trapped under the concrete, and you're sweeping your hand underneath him to try to keep his legs from getting burnt. Take it from there.
Right. And then our nozzleman, who was on the third story, he basically rode the collapse down, and he ended up being on top of the rubble just to me and Gil's right as we were laying there. And he heard Gil saying that his legs were on fire, so he turned the nozzle onto us and started spraying us through the wreckage or the rubble or whatnot.
He's not trapped.
He's not trapped. He's on top of
Mm-hmm.
the collapse
Okay.
because he rode it down.
Okay.
And then Gil, screamed at him to cut off the water. He's drowning us. So he cut it off, and we were there for I don't know. We were there for a while, and Gil kept trying to move. He kept trying to unwedge himself, but like I said earlier, he was what was holding up the collapse. And so, do you tell your one of your best friends to just stay there and wait and just keep having this weight on your neck and your back? Because if you don't, you're gonna cause a bigger collapse and kill both of us still. Or do you tell him to keep coming and just, you know, not I don't know. It was a tough situation. I wanted to tell him to quit moving, and then I wanted him out just as bad as I did. So we we didn't have really any prominent communication between us that was like, hey, I'm gonna do this, you do this, and nah, it was all pretty frantic. Once he started moving, stuff started coming down more and more, and I was screaming for him and all kinds of stuff. I remember hearing his mask, the seal on his mask came off too, and I remember hearing his air coming out from his face piece, and he couldn't get to hold his face piece on. And I remember as he was inching a little bit closer to me, I kept trying to reach up and push his face piece up. And at that time, I felt a little bit of weight start coming off of me, and so I knew that there were crews working right above me to get all the metal and concrete off. And about that time, I felt someone's hand on my rear shoulder straps of my SCBA, and I felt like someone was trying to kind of pull me up, but they couldn't get me yet because I was still caught in some stuff. And so I was screaming at them, I'm still hung up, I'm still hung up. Meanwhile, I'm still trying to hold on to Gil, trying to grab him too and take him with me. And I remember someone said, you have to let go of him, we have to get you first. And that was probably the hardest thing I had to do that day, was just let go completely, because I was trying to pull him out with me. And as I stood up, Gil came out from under the landing completely, and that caused somewhat of a secondary, I would call a secondary collapse. And that's when I got a big metal I-beam that came down and took out my knee. That's how I received my knee injury. I sprained my LCL and MCL. I tore my ACL, and I had meniscus damage, all from the secondary collapse. If the first one wasn't bad enough, it was the second one that got me. And once that happened, my feelings were I was basically done with this building, done with this whole scene. I just want to get away from it. It's hurting me, it's hurting my friend, and I'm through with it. And so I was probably about 4 or 5 stairs up on the stairs, and I just threw myself down kind of backwards the rest of the way. I didn't want anything to do with it anymore. So I tumbled down the stairs, and I landed face down. I knew they had Gil because I saw four or five other guys working with him, and I knew they had him. So I felt comfortable leaving the stairwell, and I threw myself down the stairs, and I landed on my stomach. And I remember trying to get up to my hands and knees to crawl away from the building. And as I got on my hands and knees, that's when my knee injury really became prominent, and I couldn't crawl, and so I just laid there. And I had one of my buddies from Pearland was actually working for Cypher that day, as well. And he came over and grabbed me and dragged me over to the fence, kind of took all my stuff off of me, and was telling me it's okay. You're out now. You're good. And I looked over to find Gil, and Gil was probably about 15 feet away from me, and he was screaming at everyone to get away from him and whatnot. So I knew he was back in true form, And so, I remember sitting up against the fence of the complex and looking back up at this building that had just, the stairwells just collapsed on us. And I remember looking up at the building and just feeling an overwhelming sense of this building is going to come down on me. So something just fell on me that was extremely heavy, that had me trapped. I felt like the whole building was going to come down on me. And interestingly enough, Gil, I found out later, felt the exact same way. So they had guys come around the back and take us away. They put me in one ambulance and Gil in the other ambulance. Well, one ambulance was blocked in, the ambulance that I was in. They were committed to the scene. So they had to actually wheel me back out of that ambulance and put me in a different ambulance. Well, a different ambulance was Gil's ambulance. So me and Gil, we rode to the hospital together. Understandably, he was definitely shaken up and whatnot, and had some good meds in the back of the ambulance. They got both of us to the hospital. We shared a hospital room, and we were both released later that night. I had a nice knee brace on, and he had some bumps and bruises and some mental lapses and issues that he's dealt with. So
was his legs burned?
He had what looked like small, like cigarette burns on the back of his legs, I guess you could say. Nothing too substantial, but he said he really felt it when, he went to go take a shower that night, and the water hit it. He said he felt the sting pretty good. So he didn't have any burns that needed any kind of treatment or anything like that. But I definitely could see how, he landed on some embers or fire.
What? That's an amazing story. What's your takeaways? What lessons would a listener benefit from hearing from somebody who's been where you have been?
My biggest thing, I have the opportunity to be an instructor, and I get to help cadets and teach cadet classes. On the volunteer side, I've helped out with the paid side as well, but I always tell the cadets, I don't care what department you're part of. I don't care how big or small your department is. If you're a volunteer, paid, part-time, on-call, whatever, it can happen to you. And I used to preach that. I used to preach it, and did I necessarily believe it was going to happen to me at Cypress Creek? Not really, because it was my side job. Side job fires aren't like career fires. That's kind of the mindset that people get in sometimes. It's unfortunate, and it's wrong, and that's how I felt at times. Did I go in there and John Wayne something? No, but I felt like it would never happen at Side Creek. That's what I felt like. I felt like it was my part-time job. I can kind of, take it a little bit easier, and go about my day. It can happen to you. I mean, it can happen to you anywhere, anytime. You can be doing anything. We were, like I tell people all the time, I say, I had my gear on properly, everything strapped up, everything tight, just like I teach, the cadets that I talk to. I had a hose line that I was on. I had a tool in my hand. I had everything I needed to be successful in this fire. And I was in an exterior stairwell of an apartment, usually my safe haven, where I bail out to if something goes wrong inside an apartment. I was in a safe haven, and the safe haven is what come down on top of me and almost took me and my friend's life. So everything in the world can be done right, and something can still go wrong.
As you look back now, and we have to be a word of caution as to doing this, because as we look back, our hindsight is always better than our foresight. But as you look back now and think of that day, do you think that you were able to see, whether you really understood it at that moment or not is another issue, but were you able to see that the fire involvement was significant enough that the structural integrity was probably in question before the collapse? I mean, as you were making your way up, or from the ground level looking up, or making your way up the stairwell looking up, were you able to see that there was the potential of a collapse before it happened, or was it from the fire, or was it structural deficiency in construction or something? I don't want to assume that the fire caused the collapse, but kind of talk me through that.
Right. Without getting into legalities or anything like that, there were definitely noted structural deficiencies within the complex that my fire chiefs made aware to the management, and it actually prompted both of my departments, Side Creek and Pearland, which are approximately 50 miles away from each other. Both of those departments have gone around to every apartment complex in their jurisdictions and checked structural integrity of stairwells. This particular stairwell had steel, I guess some type of steel beam or I-beam or what have you, supported by a block of wood that came out of the actual apartment, or came out of the actual structure. An interesting design. I personally, I don't feel that it was sufficient enough to hold the weight up of those stairs. And I know that there was some rust issues and there was some rotting issues with the wood on all the other stairwells in the complex that we noted after the fire. Of course, we couldn't necessarily study the staircase that fell down on top of us because, it was pretty much garbage at that point. But as far as the fire attack and the fire conditions and everything else, that to me, when I walked up there, that was a bread and butter apartment fire that got up in the attic. It was a common attic with no fire stops, no firewalls, no nothing. And there's helmet video, from one of the guys from Cypress, and they put a hurt on that fire. And we were gonna go up there and we were gonna mop up and we we're gonna put the fire out. I mean, it was just bread and butter, just simple fire. Lots of resources, but it was going to go well. That's how I felt. I didn't feel like anything in those stairs could have hurt us. When I made that decision, there was no maybe we shouldn't be here. There was none of that feeling. There was nothing. So command did a great job. Everybody on scene did a great job. No decision that I made or command made, I feel, should have been any different.
Mm-hmm. Was the fire impinging on the stairwells? As you guys were on the second floor and your nozzleman was up on the third floor, was there active fire out in the stair area?
No, the stairwell construction was all steel and concrete, so there was no fire anywhere on the actual stairs. There was fire in the apartments on the left and right side of us. Mm-hmm. But it wasn't like blowing out, into the stairwell or anything like that. It was all pretty much up in the attic for the most part.
So it was the fire inside the apartments that weakened the integrity of the stairs?
I can't really say.
But there was no fire out on the stairs, right? Correct. So it wasn't like you guys were ascending stairs on fire and then the stairs fell down on you and somebody could say, well, you shouldn't climb up stairs that are on fire. There was nothing out there to be on fire, right? They were all still on concrete.
Exactly right. And
wow.
Yeah, that's I don't know. The apartment of origin was the second story apartment, the apartment on the second level. And I believe it got up into the wall and went straight up into the attic and,
Mm-hmm.
in a sense, bypassed the third story.
Mm-hmm.
And then eventually it came back down and it got the third story. But to me, the way it looked, and afterwards and right before the collapse, I remember seeing a little bit. The way it looked was the second story apartment balcony was burned pretty good, and then the attic was burning pretty good, and it almost spared the third story in between the apartment of origin and the attic. It almost spared that third story apartment, and so that was interesting to me, that maybe it got up in the wall and there was no vertical stop to it either. Kind of something, maybe like balloon frame construction or something. I don't know,
Mm-hmm.
but it looked interesting to me. But as far as fire impingement on the stairs, there was absolutely none.
Okay, so you go back to this building again for another fire next week. Similar circumstances. What's your vigilance tell you about ascending stairs? I mean, would you, in light of what you know now, would you still ascend those stairs knowing the potential of collapse, or would you deploy another technique, with the benefit of what you've learned from this incident?
I mean, you know, with our pre-planning, we're aggressive. This has been a lesson for both departments that I've been part of. Unfortunately, I had to, undergo injury and surgery and everything else for it to be brought to light. But if it's gonna save another one of my guys or save any firefighter's life, for that matter, I'd do it over again. As far as my personal actions, I, I still feel like I would do the same thing. I mean, I'd be a little more cautious of the stairwell integrity as I'm walking up to it. I'd maybe visualize the base, visualize what I'm looking at. I mean, right now I live in an apartment and I live on the first floor, and so I have to walk underneath a steel and concrete staircase every day I leave my apartment. And every day I leave my apartment, I look at the construction on this staircase and I see how sturdy and how well made it is. And then I look at the apartment staircase, the one that collapsed on me, and it's a completely different ballgame. So, to answer your question in short, I would do the same exact thing that I would normally do. I would just be a little more vigilant of, what's actually holding this staircase up over my head.
So would you take time before you ascended stairs to take a
Yes.
look at it, perhaps from the underside, and assess the construction before you made your ascent? Because that's not something that I think many of us would typically do. If there was no fire impingement on the stairs, I don't know that we would take time to do that. Is that something you would do now or recommend that others do?
Oh yeah, 100%. I'm gonna do it for the rest of my life. Like I said, I do it now, and you know, I'm not anywhere near going back to firefighting duties yet, and I do it now in my own apartments every day when I leave. I look at the bolts that hold down the staircase, just out of habit now. And I would urge everybody, anybody who listens to this, it takes maybe 5 seconds at the most to look at all the bases of the staircases, in a stairwell. Look what's hanging above your head. You have the benefit and the opportunity, I would say, a good majority of the time, to look what's being held over your head. Whereas if you're in a house fire, or some kind of structure fire, and there's water heaters and HVAC systems above your head, and you have sheetrock above your head, you can't see that. And it'd be amazing if we had some kind of you know tool that we could see the layout of how stuff is above our heads when we go into any structure, any house fire, anything like that. But we don't have that tool. So utilize what we do have, and look around, when you're in a stairwell, and see what's hanging up above your head and what's supporting it.
If you would have arrived on that fire, and say you would have just taken a moment to look at the stairwell construction before you made the ascent, do you think it would have stopped you from going up the stairwell? I mean, was it even on your radar that it would even potentially collapse? Even if you looked up and said, well, that doesn't look like it's really built all that sturdy, you probably still would have went up, wouldn't you?
Yeah. Yep. I mean, just as I was going up the stairs, I mean, I didn't notice anything. It didn't bounce, it didn't twist, it didn't turn. Just a normal concrete steel construction apartment stairwell, and that's
no warning that it was going to collapse.
No, like I said, you know, when you're in those situations, things happen slower than reality, and things happen faster than reality, and it went real fast. It was real quick, just light to dark in about a second. So it put me on my stomach, and I was at its mercy from that point on.
Wow. Well, Jason, thank you for sharing this story. It's powerful. I mean, it's just so, as you were saying it, I could just imagine how many times I ascended stairs without any thought whatsoever. You know, as you said, you really hit me when you said, you know, the stairs would be the safe haven place that I would bail out of an apartment, you know, onto that exterior stair position, saying, you know, this is my safe place. I'm out of the fire, and, you know, this is where I would be, you know, where I would bail out to. And you're in the safe spot, seemingly, thoughtfully, and that's where you got caught.
Yeah.
It's incredible. Thank you so much for giving me the gift of your time, and the listeners the gift of your time to share this. It's just it's an incredible story, and I'm so glad we got connected.
Oh yeah, no doubt. Thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
Wow, Jason, thank you for sharing that powerful story. Before I close this episode, I want to take a moment to thank the departments and organizations that have hosted Situational Awareness Matters tour stops. Your efforts to bring a situational awareness and decision-making classes to your region are greatly appreciated. Recently, I was at the Saskatchewan Association of Fire Chiefs Conference, the Fire Department Instructors Conference, the Northwest Regional Fire Conference in Peace River, Alberta, and the Indiana Department of Homeland Security Company Officer Development Institute, where I am this week in Greenfield, Indiana. Upcoming programs include Joint Base Lewis McChord Military Base in Washington State, the Buckley Fire Department, the Alabama Fire College, Frisco, Texas Fire Department, Lodi, California Fire Department, the Illinois Fire Service Institute, and the Montana Joint Conference. If you're interested in attending an upcoming SA Matters tour stop, just head over to the SA Matters website and click on the blue box on the right side of the homepage that says Upcoming Events Schedule. And here's hoping there'll be a tour stop near you, and we'll get a chance to meet up. If you're not a member of the SA Matters community of learners yet, please consider joining. There are over 5,000 members sharing ideas on how to improve situational awareness and how to make better decisions under stress. Membership is free, and when you sign up, I'll send you a free special report called 25 Best Practices for Improving First Responder Safety. It's a short and sweet report, but it's packed full of really good ideas. If you're not a member, head over to the SA Matters website, click on the red box on the right-hand side that says Get Your Free Membership. As a reminder, every episode of the SA Matters radio show has a corresponding show notes page on the SA Matters website. The most recent episodes scroll on the home page of the website. For older episodes, you would go to your browser bar, type in samatters.com / and then put the episode number that you want the show notes for. And I always mention the episode at the start of each show. So for example, if you wanted to listen to, say, episode 40, you would open up a browser to put in samatters.com / 40. That'll take you to the page that contains the show notes. You can also listen to the episode right there as well. If you want to get connected with me on social media, you can follow at Rich Gasaway or at SA Matters on Twitter. Thank you to the more than 14,000 who have connected with me on Twitter, and I enjoy sharing those messages back and forth. 140 characters limit, but nonetheless enjoy those conversations. You can also get connected with me on Facebook by liking the SA Matters page, and on LinkedIn by searching Rich Gasaway on LinkedIn. And thanks to the more than 8,000 who've connected with me on Facebook and LinkedIn. Well, that's it. Episode 55 is complete. Thank you again to Lieutenant Jason.corthell of the Cypress Creek Fire Department for sharing your powerful story with us. Thank you to our sponsor, Midwest Fire. If you're interested in a fire truck, go over and visit them at midwestfire.com and see their innovative techniques for building fire trucks. And thank you to our listeners for sharing some of your valuable time with me today. I sincerely appreciate your support of the SA Matters mission. If you've experienced a near miss or a close call and would want to be interviewed on this show, visit the SA Matters website and click on the Contact Us link. And I'll thank you in advance for sharing your lessons learned so others may live. If you like the show, please go to iTunes or Stitcher Radio and search for SA Matters Radio. Again, SA Matters Radio. And subscribe to the podcast and leave your feedback. If you like the show, I'd really appreciate you giving it a 5-star review. Not only will that motivate me to work harder, but it'll also help others to find the show. If you've been inspired and you want to learn more about situational awareness, consider becoming a member of the SA Matters community. It is free. Be safe out there. And may the peace of the Lord and strong situational awareness be with you always.
You've been listening to the Situational Awareness Matters radio show with Dr. Richard B. Gasaway. If you are interested in learning more about situational awareness, human factors, and decision-making under stress, visit samatters.com. If you are interested in booking Dr. Gasaway for an upcoming event, visit his personal website at richgasaway.com.